The sky over the moon of Dravix 9 burned violet as the freighter tore through the upper atmosphere. Inside the cargo hold, Nira Vale braced herself against the walls, alarms howling and metal groaning around her. Her heart pounded not from fear, but from cold, sharp focus. Fear could wait. First, she had to survive. Nira was one of the few remaining human tech specialists, working the Outer Rim mining routes. She wasn't military, but she could rebuild a broken AI with a paperclip and a spark battery. That hadn't helped much. When a meteor storm shredded the freighter's stabilizers mid-flight, she didn't know who else made it. The emergency pod had ejected her straight into the forested cliffs of Dravix 9. Far from the shipping lanes, where old legends whispered of creatures that once ruled the stars and died in fire. The pod's hull hissed as she forced the door open. A rush of acrid air and the scent of ash hit her. Her legs trembled as she stepped out. Clutching a makeshift satchel packed with emergency rations, a plasma cutter, and a half-functional translator node, the terrain was rough. Twisted trees with glowing leaves leaned toward her like watchers. The ground vibrated faintly beneath her boots. Something was alive here. She limped west, following a flicker on her compass, hoping to find shelter before nightfall. But the moon never truly darkened its twin suns kept a constant dusky glow, and it wasn't long before she realized she wasn't alone. First came the scent metal smoke and something feral. Then came the sound, a deep, rhythmic breathing. Not far ahead, Nira crouched behind a jagged stone, peeking over its edge. Her breath caught. The creature was massive, easily over 7 feet tall, armored in jagged plates of bone and blackened steel. His back was turned, head bowed over the ruins of an ancient structure. Even from behind, his presence radiated danger and sorrow. Then he moved. In one fluid motion, the figure turned his head, sensing her. Its face, if it could be called, that was sharp, otherworldly. Slitted silver eyes met hers. A scar ran down his jaw to his collarbone, and his right horn was broken halfway. A symbol burned faintly over his chest plate, a spiral wrapped in thorns. She didn't recognize it. He said nothing, just stared. Nira raised both hands slowly. "I'm not here to fight, just crashed. I'm human, technician, alone." The being's eyes narrowed, glancing at the cracked translator on her belt. He stepped forward, cautious but curious.
Ah!
Each footfall made the ground quiver. Nira fought the urge to bolt. He stopped 3 feet from her and spoke in a low, resonant voice. The translator buzzed. Human, bleeding, weak, cold. Not exactly poetry, but the words sent chills through her. "I'm fine," she lied. "Just need shelter. Then I'll leave." He tilted his head as if considering. "Storm coming," he said after a moment. "Night beast wakes when suns sleep." Nira frowned. "What are you?" He didn't answer. Instead he turned and began walking toward the cliffs. Pausing to glance back at her, she got the message. The cave was surprisingly warm, lit by bioluminescent vines and protected by natural rock formations. Inside, the stranger built a small fire from dried crystalwood and silently offered her half of a fruit the size of her head. It tasted like bitter citrus and copper, but it calmed her stomach. Nira sat near the fire, watching him sharpen his blade. "You got a name?" she asked. He glanced at her again, as if unsure she deserved it. Then finally, "Kale." She whispered it back. "Kale." The name felt old, heavy. "Thanks for not killing me," she added. Kale said nothing, but his gaze lingered a moment too long on her face before turning away. They sat in silence. Two creatures from different worlds, bound by circumstance and feral. As the cave rumbled softly with the shifting winds outside, Nira realized something strange. Kale could have left her, could have let the beasts take her, but he didn't. And in that silence, as his eyes glowed faintly from across the flames, she saw not a monster, but a man. The storm outside the cave howled like a living thing.
Lightning deep green.
And jagged split the sky in unpredictable pulses, illuminating the mouth of the cave in eerie flashes. Nira Vale sat closer to the fire, hugging her knees. Kale stood just beyond the flame's reach, watching the storm with an expression she couldn't read. He hadn't spoken much since they arrived, but he hadn't left either. Nira cleared her throat. How long does the storm last? Kale didn't. Turn around until the stars bleed. She blinked. What does that mean? End of cycle. One full night, he glanced back. Sleep. I will keep watch. His voice was cold, distant, but no longer hostile. She tried to lie down, but her mind raced. Who was he? What was he? Why had he helped her? Kale, she whispered. Why didn't you let me die out there? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was barely audible. Because once, someone saved me. Nira stared into the fire, heart aching at the loneliness buried beneath his words. She didn't know what kind of life Kale had lived, but she had a feeling whatever warmth was left in him was something rare, fragile. She finally slept. And when she did, she dreamed not of home or her crash butt of eyes glowing silver in the dark, and the faint flickering feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was meant to be here. She woke up sore, but alive. The storm had passed. The world beyond the cave looked cleaner, somehow washed of ash and haze. Kale was still there, seated silently on a ledge, watching her. You didn't sleep? She asked. I don't need to. She stood, stretching. That's not creepy at all. He didn't smile, but she thought she saw the tiniest twitch at the corner of his mouth. As they walked together through the crystalline woods, Nira spoke more. She told him about Earth, about being orphaned during the final Martian riots, about rebuilding machines for people who never bothered to ask her name. Kale listened. When she asked about him, though he was quiet, until finally he said, I was forged, not born, created to fight in a war that ended before I was freed. Freed by who? My brother. His voice grew tight. What happened to him? Kale's hand clenched the hilt of his weapon. They took him. The word hung in the air like poison. Nick didn't press. She walked closer. By midday, they reached the ruins Kale had been guarding before. Massive pillars jutted from the ground, etched in a language Nira didn't recognize until she realized the script resembled human neural code. Old code, pre-singularity. She knelt beside one of the stones. Kale, this isn't alien tech. It's human or something very close. His gaze didn't waver. You understand it? Barely. But yes, his eyes flared. Then you must stay. That night, Nira worked by firelight, scanning fragments of code into her translator node. Kale paced like a silent sentinel, his presence comforting in a way she couldn't explain. At one point, her hand brushed his, as she passed him a data crystal. He froze. So did she. Sorry, she mumbled. He looked down at his hand. You are warm. You sound surprised. I am. He looked at her, eyes gleaming like mercury. No one has touched me without fear in many cycles. Nira swallowed. Well, you haven't given me a reason to be afraid. Kale tilted his head. You should be, but I'm not. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Kale reached up and unclipped the jagged plate covering his right shoulder. Beneath it, a strange symbol pulsed on his skin, half organic, half machine. The mark of a war-forged soul. I was made to destroy, he said softly. But every time I look at you, I feel something break. Nira stepped closer. Her voice was barely a whisper, then maybe let it break. She didn't expect the kiss, not from a creature made of metal and rage and forgotten grief. But when he bent toward her, his hands trembling as they cupped her cheek, his forehead brushing hers, Nira felt the world stop. It wasn't a kiss like in the stories. It was quiet, uncertain, a question more than an answer, but it was real. And for the first time in years, Niravale didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. They left the crystal forest at dawn. Nira wore Kale's spare cloak, too large for her frame, but warm and laced with subtle tech that adjusted to her temperature. Kale walked beside her in silence, scanning the horizon for danger, but his eyes drifted to her more often now. It didn't hide it. I decoded more of the ruins, Nira said, holding her portable node. They weren't just war records. They were blueprints. The humans who came here centuries ago, they tried to create peacekeepers, biosentient ones. ones who could choose love over war. Kale nodded slowly. They failed. Not entirely. She looked up at him. You're proof. He didn't answer. But he didn't deny it either. They reached a massive ridge by midday. Below it sprawled the remains of a war camp, now overrun with vines and glowing moss. Kale stopped abruptly. This is where they took my brother. Nira swallowed. Do you think he's still alive? Kale's jaw tightened. If he is not who he once was. She rested a hand on his arm. We'll find him. Together, for a long moment, Kale didn't move. Then he nodded. The camp's power core still throbbed faintly beneath the ground enough for Nira to boost a cum. Signal. She tapped into a nearby relay, trying to reach any outpost that might still be online. The response came too fast. Her screen flickered. Connection established. Central, Union Zone 9. A face appeared. Clean. Human. Polished in a way that felt sterile. Identify. Nira Vale. Civilian tech specialist. I crashed near Sector 5, and you accessed restricted ruins. You are in violation of don't care, she snapped. There's tech here that links Earth history with biosentient programming. You'll want to see this. Kale stepped into frame. The officer on screen froze. Then, that unit is war class. You are to stand back. Containment is on its way. Nira's blood went cold. No, he's not a threat, but the connection was already gone. Kale turned to her. You should run. No, they'll kill. You for helping me. Let them try. He stared at her, the edges of his mask fracturing, emotion bleeding through in raw, visible ways. Why do you keep choosing me? Because I've seen what's left of you, and it's beautiful. The sky cracked open an hour later. Dropships descended with shrieking thrusters, scattering dust and debris. Armed guards in silver armor fanned out, energy rifles drawn. Nir stood in front of Kale. A voice thundered through a loudspeaker. Step away from the unit. This is your final warning. Kale moved to shield her. I can take them. But not without becoming what they say you are, Nira whispered. He paused. Then slowly he stepped forward, hands raised. I surrender. Gasps echoed through the ranks. Stand down, the commander ordered. Restrain the woman as well. Nira didn't move. You're making a mistake. The commander approached. This machine is dangerous. He made a choice, she said firmly. That makes him more human than half of you. The commander's sneer deepened. Emotions don't change programming. Then you don't understand programming. Nira snapped suddenly. A new signal buzzed in Kale's internal receiver. Unit Z-113 online greater than brother detected. His eyes widened. He's here. Before anyone could react, a second figure dropped from a nearby cliff farmer sleeker, darker eyes glowing red. Kale stepped forward. Zane. The new figure tilted his head. You shouldn't have come. Kale's fists clenched. You remember me? I remember everything, the other said, including who we were made to be. Kale's voice cracked. But we don't have to be that anymore. You still believe in choice? Kale nodded. ZA. His eyes drifted to Nira. Then show me. The next moment's blurred. A flash of light. A scream. Blades clashing. Soldiers retreating as Kale and Zane fought brothers, not by blood but by design. Kale wasn't trying to kill. He was trying to protect. Nira ran to the core chamber and overloaded the signal relays, scrambling all. Union comes. That'll buy us 5 minutes. By the time she returned, Kale was on one knee, sparks flying from a gash in his side. Zane stood over him, blade raised. Then he stopped, looked at Nira, and asked, You stayed for him? Nira didn't flinch. Yes. Zane's eyes dimmed. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. Then maybe. You were right. He stepped back into the shadows and vanished. Kale collapsed. Nur caught him, cradling his broken body as smoke filled the air. You're not dying, no, he murmured, just tired. She pressed her forehead to his. Rebuild you if I have to. Kale's voice was weak. Nira, what? When you touched me. I felt my code change, not corrupted, not broken, just rewritten. She smiled through her tears. Then let's finish rewriting you. 6 months later, the galaxy still didn't know what to make of them. An Earthborn tech girl and a war-forged machine who chose peace. But they didn't care. Kale now worked with Nira to deactivate and repurpose old war tech into healing drones. Together, they traveled from system to system, not as fugitives but as something closer to legends, and every night, under alien stars. When they curled up together by makeshift fires, he would whisper the same words, "You gave me back my soul." She would answer, "You gave me a reason to stay." The desert moon of Viora was silent again. Once a battlefield and burial ground for ancient wars, it now lay still under the starlit sky. Above, ships hovered, quietly peacekeeping vessels, no longer sent to destroy, but to observe. And on the cracked earth beneath them stood two beings once caught between worlds. Nira, adjusting the tiny processor in her tool glove, leaned over Kale's shoulder as he rewired the last of the dormant battle drone, turning it into a medical responder. "You always overcalibrate," she teased. Kale glanced up at her, a smile tugging at his lips. "I had to impress you somehow." She laughed, soft and warm, sound he'd never stopped protecting. Since the confrontation with Zane and the Union's intervention, things had changed. Zane's retreat signaled a shift in the biosentient network. Some of the remaining units chose to disarm, laying down weapons once programmed into their code. And Kale. Kale had become a symbol, not of rebellion, not of fear, but of choice. The Union Council didn't know what to make of it. Still monitored him, still tested boundaries. But they stopped hunting him. Perhaps because of Nira. Perhaps because they saw what he became with her beside him. As the twin suns began to rise, Nira looked out at the horizon. "Do you ever think of Earth?" she asked. "Only when you do," Kale replied. "I miss it, but I wouldn't go back alone." He rose, stepping beside her. "Then don't." She turned to face him, in his hands a small silver ring, perfect, clearly handmade from salvaged plating, but engraved with something she recognized instantly, the constellation from the ruins. Where they first found peace, her breath caught. "Kale, you rewrote my code," he said quietly. "But you also rewrote my future. I don't want a command. I want a choice." He knelt, eyes steady. "Nira Vale, will you stay beside me not because of duty or danger, but because we choose each other, even beyond the stars?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times, yes. The ceremony was held under the old crystal trees where alien light shimmered through sapphire branches. Only a few attended, former crew members, neutral scientists, even 2 biosentient units from Kale's past, now choosing peace. There were no crowns, no ranks, no military titles. Only 2 souls, one born of circuitry and conflict. One of flesh and feeling, finding something purer than either ever expected. Later, as they sat by the fire, Kale looked at her, fingers gently, tracing the edge of her ring. "Do you regret it?" he asked. She leaned into him, eyes full of starlight. "I only regret not finding you sooner. Could have had anything, anyone. I did. I have you." And far beyond them, across the systems, whispers spread of a human girl who loved. A machine. Of a machine who chose love over programming. Of a bond so powerful it challenged the stars and won.